Raider Zone Weekly with Vince Colati, Ryan Smith, and Billy Hassinger.
That's right. This is Raider Zone Weekly, and unfortunately, Jesse decided to leave us again. He decided to graduate early.
Of course. Jesse, he likes to think for himself and be like, hey, I'm just going to graduate and leave us by ourselves.
Yeah, so Jesse's gone. Steve, unfortunately, something terrible has happened. He had to schedule a night class on Thursday nights.
Astronomy kills you. 3 hours, and they don't lie. It is 3 hours.
Steve, feel bad for you. But we are joined. I am Billy Hassinger, Vince Colai with me, and newbie Ryan Smith. Ryan, welcome to the show.
Oh, thanks, Billy. Good to be here.
Let's get things started off tonight. Our first topic tonight is basketball. We all thought there wasn't going to be a season, but there is. And a couple surprises. One, Oklahoma City is a half game behind Chicago for the best record in the NBA. They're 12-3. Sadly, though, they lost to the Wizards last night, who before last night only had one win. Biggest surprise for me right now is Philadelphia sitting there at 10-4, and you look at the roster, no big name players other than Andre Iguodala. They got Elton Brand, who really hasn't turned out to be the number one pick that they thought he was when Chicago took him, and they got Evan Turner, who they got a couple years ago. But other than that, they got nobody.
Yeah, you talk about Evan Turner. He was the number 2 overall pick in that draft, and a lot of people had high expectations for him, struggled a little bit starting out, but really it has improved as a great role player. A lot of talk has been he's been a solid player for that team, so you got a lot of solid pieces. Doug Williams, I believe, is their coach there.
Yeah, Doug Collins.
Doug Collins, thank you. He is very he's really developed a system that fits around those players, which is really, really good. I'm going to be a bit of a homer here and say the Cavaliers. No one expected these guys to come in and play as well as they did. Yeah, Tristan Thompson averaging 14 points. Another thing that we've got our number 1 overall pick, Kyrie Irving, averaging 17 points and about 4 assists a game. That's something you want from your number 1 overall pick in your point guard. So I think that's the biggest surprise for me is how the Cavaliers are doing so far.
Yeah, the Cavs are playing really great basketball. But back to the Sixers, they also have Andre Iguodala, who is a perennial All-Star every year. I mean, he's been in the All-Star game about 3 or 4 times now, I'm pretty sure. And Doug Collins has those guys playing really well. He's a wily veteran for a coach, and they've had a couple young coaches the past years, and Doug Collins is bringing them together. And the Cavs are looking really good, actually, compared to their 19-win season last year, which was a little bit of an embarrassment.
Talk about that. They're 6-7 currently right now, and they have a positive point differential.
That's good.
They are averaging 96.4 points a game. They give up 96.2.
Take anything positive.
Anything positive right now is a good thing for the Cavaliers. And Vince, I told you back in the draft, Tristan Thompson.
Yeah, you did. You were really excited, Billy. When we were watching this draft, he's like, "Oh, Tristan Thompson's on the board." And we're all like, "Who the heck is Tristan Thompson?" And he comes in and
Longhorn.
He's done really well. Yeah, we should know Billy with his Texas love.
Yeah.
Hey, never doubt the love of a Texas man. And I am a man that loves Texas. Moving on, we are going to talk about baseball, and that's one thing I'm going to miss about this semester with Steve not joining us. He absolutely hates baseball. Every time we talk about something baseball, he just...
I don't watch baseball, and I think it's boring, and I just don't watch it, so I don't know what's going on.
Well, now you got a guy that played baseball for 10 years, so you have something
good.
with that.
Yeah, that's a pretty good impression of him, Vince. But nonetheless, Yu Darvish, who is highly touted coming out of Japan, got a 6-year, $60 million deal yesterday, as yesterday was the last day that the Rangers had to sign him before they gave it up the rights. They gave him $60 million right off the bat. They paid $51 million, just had the rights to talk to him. They've already spent $111 million on this guy. Is he going to be worth it in the long run?
Yeah, see, Billy, I really don't know about Yu Darvish. He's a question mark to me because the Red Sox gave up a lot for Daisuke back in around 06, 07, and he hasn't panned out to be the guy they thought he was. He had a couple 10-win seasons, but the guys for overseas, I mean, they have a lot of good talent. You look at Ichiro and some of the guys over there, but I think right now Yu Darvish is a big question mark for a struggling Rangers staff.
The interesting thing about Yu Darvish, you got to look at this guy. He's 6'5", 220 pounds, and he's got about 7 different things that he can pitch instead of his, other than a changeup. But the only things he really can't do, he went 12-5 in his second year over there with a 2.89 ERA and 115 strikeouts in 2006. That was his second season. He's done really well over there. Now, a lot of people are saying Nolan Ryan himself, considered one of the greatest pitchers of all time, says he has the potential to be a number 1. So I think that's got to be a worthy investment for them to make, especially since they've lost their number 1 starter, C.J. Wilson, to the Angels. You got to look at in division. You got to bring somebody over. Colby Lewis is their starter for the opening day, but this kid's got a chance. He's 25, hitting his prime. He's got a chance to be that number 1 guy. If Nolan Ryan thinks that's the case, that's got to be the case there. Greatest pitcher of all time. You would think he'd look for things like that.
I just have my doubts about this guy, though, just for the fact that, not to dock the talent that they have over in Japan, but you don't have the quality of players. each and every team. You don't have the depth on each and every team like you do here in the United States. I mean, you look at some of these teams; they are stacked from top to bottom. That entire lineup, and it's just one of those things that you put all your eggs in one basket, and it could come back to haunt you. You know, this is exactly what we saw before in the NFL when these rookies would come in and they would want $60, $70 million right off the bat without even doing anything. That's the situation I think that the Rangers are getting into right here.
You talked about Dice K real quick. Big difference between these two guys. Dice K, 185 pounds and only 6 feet even. You're going to 6'5", 220-pound kid. He may be able to control pitches a little better.
Yeah, a little more power behind him, too.
It is time for...
5 Undivided.
Yeah, Ryan, as you know from listening to our shows, we have a lot of fun sound effects on this show. And this is our first 5 Undivided topic of the evening. And we're going to talk college football. Yes, we're talking about bowl games. I know it's over. It's been over for over a week now. But I'm a big college football fan, and I love it. So let's talk about some of the games that really surprised you.
Well, first, let's start off with the national championship game. I mean, that game came from complete left field to me because, I mean, we both knew Alabama was, a powerhouse, and we knew LSU was a powerhouse. But for Alabama's number 1 ranked defense to go in there and shut out the Tigers, I mean, I thought it was just ridiculous. I mean, some of the other bowl games, we had a lot of great competitive bowl games, but that one was one of the least competitive because Alabama just was stalwart. LSU passed the 50 one time.
Yeah, I'm with you. That's one of the big surprising games that you got to look at as a game where you're just like, wait, now this is not what happened previously, where everyone's thinking another 9-3 game, no one's going to score touchdowns, and they were all focusing on A.J. McCarron, and he stepped up, surprisingly. He did fairly well running that team, that offense, making sure they got those first downs, playing that defense just went ridiculous. The other one that, biggest surprise, I think, to me was that 73-20 beatdown of
West
Clemson. Virginia Clemson. The 99-yard was going in for the touchdown. He somehow stripped the ball right at the goal line before he crossed it. 99-yard touchdown, swung the game completely because that was a back-and-forth game going on. We knew Clemson was one of those high volatile attacks, and now they went back home with their tails between their legs. I think that's a game that came out of nowhere because everyone thought the Big East was going to be terrible.
I'll tell you, the two games that really intrigued me this year, one was the West Virginia-Clemson game, and then also Baylor and Washington. I mean, you talk about defensive coordinators need a new job. Washington, the day after, fired their defensive coordinator. Clemson got rid of their defensive coordinator. So what's going on? We had the same record broken in a matter of a week, and it's just, and you watch some of those games, you knew that some of those underclassmen, such as Robert Griffin, after that game, he has nothing left to do in college. I mean, they're not going to be up there for a national title next year. Kendall Wright's gone. They're losing a number of their offensive linemen. The defense won't be as good next year. So Robert Griffin III just coming out, the smart thing for him to do. But we'll talk about that a little bit later.
Yeah, I was going to say, funny thing about that, but we'll get to that later.
But, there was just so many great bowl games, and then one that really surprised me the most was K-State and Arkansas. That was the game that I was looking forward to the most because I thought Connor Klein for Kansas State, who just really ran all over Big 12 defenses, did a tremendous job. Arkansas shut him down, and Tyler Wilson really emerging to prove that he is one of the best quarterbacks in the SEC. And then, I was telling my buddy Nick after the national title game, A.J. McCarron is going to be, if not the best, probably the second best quarterback in the SEC next year, and that's with Tyler Wilson coming back, Aaron Murray at Georgia, Connor Shaw at South Carolina. That kid really has potential to be great.
I think they're saying Wilson's going to be the top quarterback going into the SEC, but McCarron can make some big strides.
Yeah, and one thing you said about Connor Klein, he was running all over Big 12 defenses. You're talking about teams like Oklahoma State and Oklahoma that averaged over 35 points a game, 40 points a game. I mean, those SEC defenses, they're quick, they're tough, and they will hit you. And I mean, that's one thing Connor Klein never saw all season.
You know what would have been nice to see? It would have been nice to see like an Oklahoma State versus an Alabama or LSU before that game, just to see after that crazy game that they played against Stanford, that went to overtime and all sorts of that type of stuff. I love the college football overtime, by the way. It's so much better than the NFL's.
Yeah. But if I was Stanford's kicker after the Stanford-Oklahoma State game, I would have actually transferred to Oklahoma State because he'd be the big man on campus after those two kicks that he shanked.
Oh, I felt so bad for that kid. And
particularly being a freshman?
Yeah, and you think about it, there's just so many things going wrong. You had to feel bad for the kid.
Yeah.
He just came into a bad situation, and then the pressure's on. Not too many guys who was a freshman, inexperienced in a big-time situation, is going to make that kick at the end of the game. Coach Shaw handled that right? Gundy did a good job with it at Oklahoma State, and Oklahoma State just happened to get lucky. And
The thing that blows my mind, though, is why are you playing for the tie when you have Andrew Luck that was on a hot streak? He I think, missed 3 passes the entire game. If he's on fire down that fourth quarter, try and ride him into the end zone instead of going for that field goal.
that's something else I've never understood about football. You got teams that have great quarterbacks, great wide receivers. Go for the stinking win.
Exactly.
Don't risk losing it in overtime because something crazy is going to happen, and that's exactly what we saw in this ball game between Stanford and Oklahoma State. As we move on back to basketball, but not the NBA, we don't care about them that much. We're talking about college basketball. Syracuse is off to their best start in school history, and Murray State, the last 2 remaining undefeated teams. What is going on in college hoops?
Both of these are mind-boggling. You take Murray State, who's playing teams like Morehead State. Morehead State, I know they made the NCAA tournament, but they're not one of those teams if you look at automatic qualifiers like you would think in football, the big power conferences, Big Ten, Big East, those types of groups, Murray State's not from there, and they're doing really well. And they got a cool name, the Racers. I like that. But Syracuse, with their whole situation of the Bernie Fine incident, the sexual abuse charges, all that stuff going on, we saw what that did to Penn State football. And that they've been able to, I know they didn't lose their head coach, but that's their associate head coach. He's still a big guy around there. To be able to hold off under this pressure is pretty impressive.
Yeah, but I mean, you look at Syracuse, they have 3 guys that could go lottery picks this year. I mean, if they go out. I mean, Scoop Jardine's having a great season. He's averaging like 14.7 assists. I mean, Fab Mello is a defensive power in the paint.
The best name in college basketball.
Fab Mello. If we could have 2 Mellos in the NBA, that'd be a problem. Carmelo would get an ego. And then Chris Joseph also down on the post is also a pretty decent perimeter shooter. I mean, they have 3 guys that go lottery picks, and Murray State, I mean, we'll find out about them, but right now they're ranked 10th in the nation, so I mean, I can't say anything about them yet.
And, you look at it, Syracuse has had a lot of great players in the past. You talk about Mello, you talk about Farouk Amino, Johnny Flynn, and these teams that had a lot of these stacked players did not do what this team this year is doing. So does that really show that with these guys actually being together for a number of years, because Jardine, Mello, these guys were there last year, and they're back again this year. This is kind of like what we saw down at Florida, when they had Horford, Brewer, Noah, other people.
You shall not be named, Noah.
Well,
Billy and I, for the record, are not fans of Joakim Noah. We don't like him very much.
After he badmouthed the Cavs in the playoffs, I mean,
he didn't badmouth the Cavs. He badmouthed Cleveland.
He badmouthed Cleveland. It's just he's low on our list of players.
But nonetheless, though, you look at it, when players stick together, and that's what happens with a lot of these mid-majors and these lower-level schools. They don't get the big-name players that are one and done. They get these guys that come in and play together. You get that team chemistry, and that is what is important, and that's exactly what Syracuse is doing.
Well, look at San Diego State last year, too. That's a great example of those guys. They're a mid-major team, if you think about it, and really playing up to
yeah,
their
and Kentucky as well. I mean, they brought all their guys back. Whenever you don't have the one-and-doneers, you have a great, solid core every season.
That is true, and look at Ohio State. They actually returned most of their team from last season.
Go Sully.
Yeah, we'll talk about that later, though, maybe. Who knows? Back on to football now, the NFL. There's a lot of talk about who should be MVP. A lot of people say Aaron Rodgers should be. People say Drew Brees. Some people just say, who cares? You look at it, though, I think it should be Drew Brees, in my personal opinion, because I'll let you guys make your cases before I make mine.
You go first. Mine's kind of silly.
All right, well, if I were to say the MVP of the league, I would probably have to go with Drew Brees. I mean, breaking records, led his team to a 13-3 regular season record. The guy is obviously the best quarterback in the NFL, hands down. But if I were to give an actual MVP award, I'd give it to Jim Harbaugh, because he's a coach, but look what he's done with that program. I mean,
they have Coach of the Year for that.
Well, I mean, I'm just saying.
Okay.
I mean, he is the guy. He gave Alex Smith a reason to want to play again after all the coaches he's been through, all the seasons he's been through that have just not worked out. He turned from one of the biggest busts ever into a starting quarterback in the NFC Championship game this weekend.
It doesn't help when you have a different coordinator every year of your career.
Yeah. Exactly.
When you go through multiple systems and you just can't get used to one, it's going to cause some problems.
Yeah.
Mine is Peyton Manning. And no, literally, it's Peyton Manning, because you got to look at this. That team went from 10-6 last year to 2-14, and I understand that they had injuries on defense and everything, but that team was built around Peyton Manning. Manning could make it. Even they said this year they would have projected them to have about 8 or 9 wins. That's still a lot more wins than what they had this year without him. And this is the most valuable player. He basically proved it's the same thing like where Steve said he wanted to retro the MVPs for LeBron when he left Cleveland because of how bad they did. Same case here. When he's gone, they're just awful. Now they're talking about kicking him out because of Andrew Luck. Quite interesting, but I would give him the MVP with his injured neck, and maybe some small consolation for not playing because we know he's probably the most competitive guy in the league.
Yeah, I agree with Ryan. Drew Brees, in my mind, is the MVP of the league, but you can't dock Aaron Rodgers for the season he had. But you look at that last game of the year against the Lions, Matt Flynn came in and tore it up. Yes, the Packers would not have been the same team without Rodgers back there, but Flynn, he's done great in every start.
He set a Packers record for passing yards.
The backup quarterback. 480 yards and 6 touchdowns.
Yeah.
It was
Hey,
perfection.
you still have that money clip on there?
Actually, I believe that we do.
This is what Matt Flynn's going to get. Oh, wait.
Why is it not playing? There we go.
That's what Matt Flynn's getting in this offseason.
Oh,
Matt Flynn.
Someone's going after
Matt Flynn is going to get paid, and he's going to get paid very nicely. But yeah,
Somewhere Jesse is laughing because of this clip.
if he's even listening, which
Yeah.
I hope he is. We love you, Jesse. But nonetheless, so you look at Matt Flynn. Yes, they wouldn't have gone 15-1 without Aaron Rodgers, but they would have been in the playoffs. I think even if they would have been with Matt Flynn, that team was back there healthy this year, and there was just almost nothing that they could do wrong until Kansas City. That was a glorious day because then we'd have to hear about the Packers going undefeated, which, every year when they get that one team that's going undefeated throughout part of most of the season, it just gets annoying hearing about it, much about somebody else who shall remain unnamed for the time being.
Cough, New England.
I'm not even talking about that. Vince knows exactly what
I
I'm
know who
talking
you're
about,
talking
but
about.
we are going to move on. We're moving on to our cheers of the week and kind of talked about it already. Back to basketball. I put on the script that Oklahoma City had the best record in the NBA. That was before they lost last
Well,
night.
they still are apparently, according to people on ESPN. They're still the best record in the league.
No, they're half a game behind Chicago.
Statistically, after Chicago won last night,
Chicago's 13-2, Oklahoma City's 12-2.
You should
half
call
game
in
behind.
ESPN and tell them that they're all wrong.
Nah, I'll leave that for someone else to do. My cheers is going out to Philly. Like we talked about earlier, they have just absolutely been doing excellent this year, despite the fact that they have no big name other than Iguodala.
Yeah, in a division with the Boston Celtics, the Magic, and the Hawks, and they're the first place team right now with the best home record in the NBA. I mean, nobody saw that coming. Like we said earlier, they have no really big names. I mean, sure, Iguodala and a couple of high draft picks, but I mean, Doug Collins has that team playing well, and in a division like that that's been dominated by Boston or Orlando the past couple of years, I mean, you can't ask for anything more from the 76ers.
Just listen to this. Right now, Philadelphia is sitting at the 3rd seed in the East. If the playoffs were to start today, they would be playing Indiana at home. Philly's won 8 of their last 10 games. Yeah, they lost their last game, but they have the highest point differential in the NBA at plus 13.6. So they're not just winning games; they're winning by a pretty good margin.
Yeah, and you talk about that. This is basically this team returned from last year. They were a playoff team last year. They got knocked out in the first round by Miami, but still, playoff team last year. Made it there when no one expected them to. Came through and really just dominating right now, and it's great to see that. Like we said, Evan Turner, Ohio State guy. Nice to see that he's being able to contribute. And this team overall, they haven't been good since Iverson left, and that's something the 76ers. Philly always loves its teams, except when they're losing, and then it hates them to guts. But it's still nice to see a team like this put together and is being run really well.
Yeah, defense wins championships, and they held 8 straight teams to under 100 points, and that's unheard of in the NBA, which is such a high-scoring league now.
And you also look at, I believe, they're only giving up the second fewest points in the league. Chicago has the best scoring defense, allowing just under 86 points a game. Philly's only allowing 87.5 points a game, so they're doing it both offensively and defensively. And
is Rose still hurt, or is he playing again?
He did not play last night.
He didn't play. Okay, because I know he's been on and off because he's got turf toe, which is weird to get it on a basketball court.
Yeah.
Hey, you can get it's.
I know.
It's just one of those weird
odd.
injuries, weird names. But nonetheless, though, City of Brotherly Love, we're giving you some love. Congratulations, Philly. We hope you keep doing it. And if you meet Miami in the playoffs, beat them.
Please.
If anybody meets Miami in the playoffs, beat them.
Whoever plays Miami in the first round of the playoffs, I'm going to be their biggest fan for that series. Our jeers of the week, it was
Oklahoma City.
It was Oklahoma City losing to a team that only had one loss going into last night. One win. As before last night, Washington was abysmal 1-12. Now they're 2-12, but that's not what we were jeering this week. I actually told the guys we were going to jeer somebody else. I changed my mind again.
Oh boy.
Because I can do it. Fausto Carmona.
This power is getting to your head a little bit, man. You gotta calm down, pull on the reins here. But Fausto Carmona is hilarious. I couldn't believe this when I read. All right, so basically,
you want me to introduce the story?
No, I
want
to talk about it.
Too bad. Fausto Carmona was arrested as he was using an assumed name and lied about how old he was. Vince, you can take it.
Yeah, he's being arrested as he's leaving the Dominican Republic to come back to the U.S. He's been pitching in the Winter League, and apparently he's 3 years older than what actually is stated on his birth record, and his name is completely different. It's not Fausto Carmona. It's I don't even know how to say his name.
Roberto
Uribe or something weird like that. But it's just sad because you see this kid. He's been so up and down. I don't know how he made it back on the roster last year. He stayed injury free, I guess, and he was consistent enough that they decided to keep him. But this is the second case that they've done now with pitchers coming from the Dominican Republic. The Marlins pitcher, same thing. He was 28 years old, and he said he was like 23. So I mean, this is bad. They just want to get out. They want to make themselves younger so they can get paid better. If this is actually true, that's kind of pathetic and sad considering how up and down he's been in the MLB.
I think the bottom underlying reason that he changed his name is because he knew he was going to get drafted by Cleveland. I mean, that's just a downer right there if you're coming from the Dominican Republic. But I mean, you look at a couple years ago, he had a Cy Young season. Like
what fan are you?
Me? Oh, I'm a Cavs fan all the way. I'm a Cavs Indians.
Okay, you're an okay. I thought you were pulling a Steve.
No, I'm an everything Cleveland fan.
Vince,
but
we make fun of Cleveland sports all the time.
It's like depression. We need Xanax just to watch games.
True.
I just
want to make sure you were a true Cleveland fan, not a Pittsburgh Pirate fan or something.
No.
That makes fun of Cleveland fans. It makes no sense.
No, I love Cleveland, but I'm also saddened by the fact that I love Cleveland. But I mean, Carmona had a great year a couple years ago, and like you said, he's been in the minors. He's been up and down. He's been the roller coaster ride for the Tribe, and he's had a couple good seasons where they thought, his fastball was working well. He's got that great sinker ball that comes down. He's a ground out pitcher, but I mean, he's so up and down, and now the scandal comes out. If you're the Indians, what do you do to handle this situation? I mean, do you cut him? Do you keep him? I mean, you don't. I mean, if you're the upper management, what do you do?
You just got to wait it out and find out what goes on first, and that's follow what Miami did. They did the same thing. They waited it out, and then they re-signed him for a 1 year deal.
What I say is, if he actually does play this year, is doing good, trade him. We do it any other time. Someone's having a good season, we trade him. So.
And I bet he goes to the playoffs.
Yeah, most likely, just because.
The question is, will he use Carmona or his real name in that case?
That is a very good question. But nonetheless, we boo you, Fausto Carmona, or whatever your name is. I saw it, and I forget what it is.
It's complicated.
He has like 4 names now, so.
Yeah, pretty much. Speaking of which, we need a new soundbite.
5 Undivided.
As we're going to go back to college football, just because, like I said earlier, I love it so much. Who are some of your guys' favorite players to watch next year in college football?
Braxton Miller from Ohio State. I think
for sure.
This is probation year, so this is trial year number 2 for him. He gets a full season under his belt. He's got no pressure on him because they're not going anywhere. So he can just relax, play, get everything under his belt with Urban Meyer's system, and then they can destroy when he's a junior. So you got to look at that. You got to look at A.J. McCarron. Over down there, and Trent Edwards not Trent Edwards. Sorry, the Arkansas's quarterback. Tyler Wilson. Why did I think of Trent Edwards?
I don't know.
That's Tyler Wilson, but yeah,
Buffalo.
I think those are the 3 quarterbacks to watch out for, particularly Ohio State. Us because we like Ohio State, but with those 2 guys, McCarron really showing that he can carry that team, and Alabama's been missing that go-to quarterback guy for the longest time, who's been a guy who can put people on his back. And so I think you really need to see that from an Alabama football team. It's been defense and running. Now you need someone who can pass the ball.
Yeah. My first guy that I'm looking out for, actually, he's been on the radar before. That's Marcus Lattimore from South Carolina. 2 years ago, he has a great season, like one of the SEC players of the year, bar none. I mean, he helped that South Carolina offense.
And that's when he was a freshman.
Yeah, as a true freshman coming in there and just dominating on the running game. This year, tears his ACL, he's out. He's going to come back next year under Spurrier's offense. And I mean, he ran great as a true freshman. He's gained experience on the field, He's still got Connor Shaw at quarterback with a decent SEC defense. I think Lattimore's going to be a force to be reckoned with. But another guy I'm going to be looking out for, Darren Thomas of Oregon. He decided to come back for his senior season.
Nope, he's leaving.
He's leaving.
Darren Thomas is leaving.
Yes.
That's changed. Well, then, never mind.
We're going to look out for him in the NFL.
I'm going to look out for him in the Combine, actually. I mean, it's part of college football, but no, it can be. But
Yeah.
I mean, another one. Did Kenyon Barner came back? Didn't
Yeah, he came back.
because it was either him or Darren Thomas that I knew left or stayed. But Kenyon Barner is another guy to look at because I mean he is. I mean, if you look at Oregon, they could have been a 1-2 punch the entire year with LaMichael James and Kenyon Barner because I think Kenyon Barner is also one of the best running backs in the college football. Because, I mean, he's got that explosion, but he's got a little more power than LaMichael James because LaMichael James is a more upfield runner, but Kenyon Barner can put his head down and lower his shoulder, and he can take some hits, too, as well with his speed.
Yeah, a few different guys that I'm looking at is a couple of them out in the Pac-12. One of them is Kenyon Barner. Another one, DeAnthony Thomas. He was a freshman this year, had his struggles for the Ducks. I think he's going to come back next year, and he's going to be explosive, even more explosive than he was this year. I agree with you, Ryan, on Marcus Lattimore. He just tore it up. Another guy from the SEC, sticking with the South Carolina, Jadeveon Clowney, who was the number one player from high school last year. I thought he would, quite frankly, would be a bust. I didn't think he was. He is a freak of nature. He is pretty much Ndamukong Suh playing defensive end, as he's just absolutely nuts.
Let's hope Detroit doesn't draft him when he goes. That'd be a scary
Yeah, we still got another couple of years yet before that happens. But someone else going back out to the Pac-12, Matt Barkley. You thought this kid would actually come out. He said he had unfinished business to do, and I actually respect that. He wants to be a college student. He knows that he's going to be in the NFL. He'll be a first-round pick, probably the first overall pick next year, depending on how good of a season he has this year. And you just think about it. You got to have a lot of respect for that guy. He knows he could have gone in the top 5 this year, could have made some big bucks, decided to go back to school, wanted to try for a national champion. And Landry Jones, he's another guy. He could have come out this year because next year I don't think Oklahoma's going to be nearly as good because Ryan Broyles is graduating and he's gone. So you look at the targets he's going to have, they're not going to be as good. So Landry Jones really could possibly have a fall-off season compared to this year.
Well, look at what he did without.
Go ahead.
Oh, well, thank you. But look at what he did without Ryan Broyles. I mean, Ryan Broyles was his go-to guy. I mean, without him, Landry Jones averaged 3 more picks per completion. He had 6 picks in the last 2 games without his star wide receiver there. I mean, it's unbelievable. And talking about wide receivers, Swope out of A&M is coming back for his senior season. He had the record for receptions and receiving yards from A&M in the past year, and I mean he's looking really great to me.
I really think you're going to see a lot of these players, these juniors or draft-eligible sophomores, coming back for another year to get some seasoning because now with this structure and contact, they can't get these $60, $70 million contracts. There's no really incentive for them to leave early.
Which is a good thing.
Yes, I agree.
Make them earn those big bucks.
And Barkley... Barkley, you hit the nail on the head. Barkley wants to play in a postseason game. He hasn't gotten to do that. He wants to do that. And Landry Jones, like you said, he did bad afterwards. He's coming back. He wants to improve a little bit more because his stock dropped terribly.
Matt Barkley played in a bowl game his freshman year. They played Boston College at San Francisco. I remember watching that game.
Okay.
Because Pete Carroll was complaining about their headsets not working.
Oh, Pete Carroll.
Oh, you are so funny. Moving on to my favorite sport, NASCAR. Not really. But it was just funny. Danica Patrick making a switch from IndyCar over to NASCAR. Is going to run a full nationwide series schedule this year. Going to race 10 Sprint Cup series. One of those being the Daytona 500. Can't wait to see how that goes. But says that she is going to be the honey badger of NASCAR.
The honey badger of NASCAR.
There's only one honey badger, and that is Tyrann Mathieu. But nonetheless, what are your thoughts on Danica saying that she wants to be the honey badger?
Well, first, I'll start that out with, Danica. And I mean, I think I can leave it there. But then she's a very good driver. She was a very good IndyCar driver. I'm not a big racing guy, but I mean, I follow it a little. And I know that she had a decent IndyCar record. But NASCAR last year, she underperformed for the most part. She had a couple top 10s. But I mean, she was close a couple times. And this year, I think if she really improves and she really has a good crew and a good team, she's got a good shot. But I mean, in comparison, if she were to actually move on to the Sprint Cup immediately, she would have no chance.
She had one win, and that was in Japan in the IndyCar. She's finished in the top 10. She's a very good driver, like you said. She's won at all other levels of racing. She's been racing since she was little. I love this, though. This is the exact attitude she needs to have. Honey Badger don't give a you-know-what. And she needs to she's got to step up and do that because she's racing with the big boys now. Everyone that they're widely considered, at least in the United States, as the top circuit. These guys are the next jump to top circuit. These are the guys that you have to compete up against that are going to be in the news. You're not going. The only time that the IndyCar guys are really there is the Indianapolis 500. So I really like this attitude that she has to take, and she's got to take it and stick with it. and get there. We know that she's not afraid to get in wrecks or anything either. So it should be fun to see what she does on the circuit after she's got a handle on that car. It's a totally different car.
Yeah, she is the NASCAR minority right now, so she's got to be able to step up and be that honey badger for those men.
There was someone else that was a number of years ago. It was a woman. Her name was Shauna Robinson, who raced in Daytona, and she kind of had that same attitude. But then after a few races, she just couldn't handle it. She cracked underneath the pressure. She couldn't handle being up there with the big guns. So that's just one thing that kind of concerns me about Danica, because she's got the attitude right now, but how is she going to have that attitude once they start racing? Because these aren't the open wheel cars like they race in IndyCar. These are
big boy toys.
Yeah, so to speak. But she didn't do that bad in the Nationwide Series this last year. But up in the Sprint Cup Series, I just can't see her having that much success.
We'll see what happens. Again, like I said earlier, when she was little, she won a lot of races, so she can rely on that, and I think she's got the mentality to break through.
We will have to wait and see. Daytona coming up
Go
in
Danica.
February, which Daytona always always a fun weekend for me. Moving on, back to football. Terrell Owens, whose agent Drew Rosenhaus said that he is only going to be playing in the NFL, declined a contract from the Chicago Rush of arena football. We talked about this last semester. Is now going to play for the Allen Wranglers in Texas of the Indoor Football League. Is this a good move for
This is
Terrell Owens?
amazing, and by amazing I mean this is amazingly hilarious. He goes not one level downward. He doesn't go to the AFL, which is widely considered the alternative to pro football in the United States. You have the NFL and you've got the AFL, which is the Arena League. A lot of teams can go in there. Then you've got the UFL, which is kind of like a minor league system.
That's a flop. That's a flop, though. I worked for the Gladiators this last summer. We had a player leave to go play for the Las Vegas Locomotives or whatever the team out there is. The UFL didn't even have money to pay their players, so they had to come back to arena.
Yeah, so the arena football is widely considered the number 2 football game in the United States. He's going a step lower. You should have taken the Chicago Rush gig. You should have called them back and been like, "Hey, you still want me? I'm here. I'm available." This just makes me laugh because of his attitude. He's a great player, but his attitude has just dropped him down so far. You can see what happens when you have a bad attitude towards teammates and you are a toxin in the locker room.
Yeah, he's still in good shape, and for his age, he's in very good shape, and he's ready to play football. But I'm just ready to hear his press conferences. That's my teammate.
Yeah, that's what I was thinking.
That's my quarterback. What's
get your sunglasses on.
What's he gonna do in Allen, Texas? Is he gonna have that publicity, that press conference that he needs to be TO? He's not gonna pull out his Sharpie on the grass field that play have to resod every couple months. It's not gonna be the Terrell Owens that everyone's gonna see.
Maybe this will propel the Indoor Football League as he'll be the marquee player by getting in trouble all the time and making headlines for them.
You know what? You never hear about the Indoor Football League. You're going to hear about now with Terrell Owens being in there. I would have loved to have seen this guy in arena football because there are some very good defensive backs, and with working with the Gladiators, I got to see a number of them last year. Those guys are freaks. Like, they are NFL talent, just not up to not that size, but they are great athletes. They can make the plays, and not even being biased, the Gladiators definitely had a great defensive backfield with the guys they had: Joe Finishy, Levy Brown, DeMarcus Robinson. That was a very talented defensive backfield. They were great. I would love to have seen Terrell Owens go up against those guys.
And that's the interesting thing is that this may be, so we're laughing about, but this may be a brilliant PR move on his part that if he can bring this group out of obscurity and do something, that's brilliant on his part. But I don't see that happening. I just see it as a one-year wonder. Maybe they'll show his first game on ESPN for a little bit. It'll be in the highlight reel. We know it'll be on SportsCenter, but after that, it'll probably drop off.
Yeah, and if he doesn't play well with a team like that, it could be a double-edged sword for him, because if he goes down to that level of football and doesn't play well, you could kiss your NFL career goodbye, Terrell Owens.
But then what if he excels, just absolutely tears it up, gets a contract with another NFL team? Who knows? We'll just have to.
Time will tell.
The season starts next month. It will go throughout the summer. He could be ready for training camp for all we know.
That's true.
We will just have to wait and see. But T.O., you make us chuckle. Moving on, we're going to talk about the NFL once again. Still staying with football. Playoffs. We are into the championship. We are in championship weekend this weekend, with the Patriots hosting the Ravens and the Niners hosting the Giants of all teams. But nonetheless, what are your thoughts on the playoffs so far? Any big surprises coming from the wild card weekend and divisional weekend?
I think the biggest surprise was the fact that God was on the Patriots side in the Denver game. It was very, very evident Tom Brady was he was Tom Brady again. You know, they took a lot of heat for not being able to win playoff games after they had their little run early in the decade. That game, to me, solidified Tom Brady as he is still a playoff quarterback. And then on the other side, you look at the Giants. Going in after the game they played against Atlanta, 24-2, everyone had questions about their defense going in, but they have 3 solid defensive linemen at all times. You know, so I mean, they could bring them in, and their defense has played really well. And in fact, a lot of the analysts thought the Giants were going to beat the Packers before that game even started. That was their upset pick, and I think the Giants are playing really great football right now, and the Niners are going to have a handful.
The Giants have been that obligatory team that we've seen since the 2005 Steelers that make a run of some sort that no one ever expects. They go on some sort of tear, and they just take off. And they're the team that no one expects coming out, and they you look at that, but you look on the opposite side. You got just as good of a defense in San Francisco playing. The Smith brothers up front. Really, they're doing it with 3-man pressure. Giants are doing it with 4. You've got 3 people coming up and make it without any blitzes. That's ridiculous. And we all know Eli Manning. He gets his Manning face and likes to throw interceptions whenever he gets pressure on him. So I'm looking to see how well that defensive line gets up there. And if Vernon Davis is sobbing on the sideline again, I won't be surprised because that was just an amazing catch. That offense, if it clicks and goes. And then you talk about that Patriots game. Tebow apparently got hurt in that second quarter, but that didn't matter because Brady was on fire. You knew he was angry at having to come in and having to play. He's got to prove himself now because everybody was doubting that they play. But I don't see this. I'll explain a little later, but I don't see this happening against the Ravens coming up on this game. I think the Ravens' defense is a little too much, and I think Ray Rice decides to run all over them again.
Yeah, you talked about the San Francisco defense. Aldon Smith, he's a freak.
He came out of nowhere.
Justin Smith, too. Don't forget it on the end.
Oh, no, I know about Justin. I'm talking about Aldon Smith right now.
Yeah.
When they took him in the top 10 in last year's draft, I'm like, I didn't think this guy would go till the 20s, and then he's like right up there with the sack record
14
for rookies.
sacks.
Like 14 and a half sacks in a regular season. He's just been playing amazing. You got to look at the linebacking core. Aldon Smith got moved to outside linebacker. They got Patrick Willis, Navarro Bowman, Larry Grant. That's a pretty good solid core of linebackers. Larry Grant, one of those guys who's from Ohio State, was like a 7th-round pick. He's actually not doing too bad for himself. Yeah. Then you got Navarro Bowman, who came from Penn State, known as AKA Linebacker U. He's having a good solid career for them as well. Patrick, well, he was supposed to be a monster. He's been a monster. And Justin Smith, he's really revitalized his career. Came from Cincinnati, was there for a couple years. They were down in the dumps, and then he just got this team, and they are playing really good football right now. I think it's going to be a great defensive battle for the NFC for the Hallis Trophy this weekend between the Giants and the Niners. Moving on back to college basketball, as you all know, we are all Ohio State fans. At least I'm pretty sure Ryan is.
Oh, go Bucks!
Thank you.
The question
finally, it's 3 people that can agree on something.
The question here is: Ohio State having their troubles on the road. They lost to Kansas, which was expected. They lost to Indiana, which Indiana was no slouch at, and they are no slouch at all this year. Lost to Illinois. That's the big question right there.
Brandon Paul.
How far can Ohio State go with the way that they're playing right now on the road?
Well, let's look at their 3 losses. You talk about Kansas. That game would have been a lot closer. I think Ohio State, they were even close. Solinger got hurt in the first quarter. They probably would have, if you really think about it, if Solinger had stayed healthy that entire game, they probably would have won that. They were close in that game. I think they only lost that game by 5. They didn't lose by much. And that's without him playing in that game at all from like the first 2 minutes on. Then you've got that second game against Indiana. Indiana's on a hot streak. Again, another close loss. Takes Illinois one guy to get 43 points. Well, that's not a good sign for one player to get 43 points. It still took a guy to get 43 points to beat Ohio State. So you got to look at this. It's still a very solid team. They just have to overcome those road woes, and I think they can. I just don't know if this team, again, we always see these Ohio State basketball teams. I don't know if they have that mentality to get to that final level. I think they can get to that Final Four. They can get to that sweet Elite Eight. But it's really got to take a different mentality, a different gear for these guys to jump up, and you got to really see if they can do it. And I don't know yet. We got to see if some good tough road tests against Michigan on the road is going to be an interesting one, and Michigan State too will be interesting to watch. Michigan's really developed, and they're number 19 right now. Michigan State always good.
And they also got to go to Wisconsin yet too on the road this year.
No one wins in Wisconsin.
Very rarely does someone win
this season they've won at the Kohl Center, but that is a tough place to play. But you look at those 3 losses for Ohio State. Granted, they were on the road, yes. I don't think that's the biggest factor here. All 3 of those games, Sullinger and Deshaun Thomas got 2 early fouls in the first 6 minutes of all 3 of those games. Whenever your 2 biggest men, one of them being an All-America Player of the Year candidate, and the other one averaging about 12 points a game and being a solid player as a sophomore, you lose your 2 postmen, your front court is definitely in trouble. I mean, that's exactly what happened against Kansas. Kansas has a lot of big guys. Robinson, it just had a great game against them. Indiana, Cody Zeller, one of the Zeller brothers, coming out of nowhere. And then Brandon Paul. I mean, granted, that wasn't a big man threat, but when Brandon Paul hits 8 3-pointers, I mean, it's tough. And whenever you have to put in guys like Ravenel, as soon as they get hurt, I mean, granted, Ravenel is no slouch, but whenever the Buckeyes get into foul trouble, they get into problems, and they start to rush their offense, rush their defense, because they feel like they're behind, and it's just a problem for them.
I'll tell you someone who's really made me angry in games like that is Buford. When they get in those type games like that, he just absolutely sucks.
He's the guy
hoisted up.
He's the guy that has to show up. He is the senior. He is the guy. And if one of your big guys goes down, he has to step up and start making
Kraft
shots.
has to watch his turnover ratio too, because he likes to dribble to the corner and stare at the guy he's going to pass to, and he needs to not do that.
But still, Kraft's only a sophomore. I'll give him a little bit of credit. But
Buford,
you're a senior.
step up.
Knock it off.
5. Undivided.
It is our third and final 5 undivided topic of the evening. Back to college football. Like I said, I love college football. Who's staying and who's leaving? We're going to play our own little game of smart and not smart. I'm going to give you guys a name, and I want you guys to tell me if you think that it is smart or not smart that he is staying. First one, Darren Thomas decides to go to the NFL. Is this a smart thing for him or not a smart thing?
Good.
Okay, not smart. I think, those system quarterbacks that you hear about all the time? I think he might be one of those guys. You see him running in. He makes a lot of line audibles, a lot of checks, and there's no doubt he did a lot better than Masoli when he stepped in. Nobody thought anyone was going to be better than Masoli at that time. But he stepped in and he's done really well. But I think he needed at least one more year to come out. That's why he's been, I feel, the biggest surprise that's come out so far amongst the people compared to people staying. I think people coming out, he's been the biggest surprise so far.
Yeah, I agree completely. I think it's a very unsmart move for Darren Thomas to go out. I mean, he is a very good talent. But one thing, he and Cam Newton are both the system kind of quarterbacks. But what Cam Newton has that Darren Thomas doesn't is size and arm strength. Darren Thomas is a great option quarterback. So is Tim Tebow. But Tim Tebow also throws 12 passes a game and completes 4 of them. So, I mean, they're really good quarterbacks, very good talents, very passionate guys. But I think as system quarterbacks go, running the option, running the spread, Cam Newton was the one to break the mold because he is 6'6", 260 pounds, and can still run.
So you're saying Thomas should be drafted by the Broncos to back up Tebow?
Well, obviously. I mean, that's obviously his only choice. But I think he's a late round guy, a team that needs a good backup quarterback, 5th, 6th round. But I just think if he stayed one more year at Oregon, they have a national title shot.
All right, next player on the board, Monty Ball decides to come back to Wisconsin after a tremendous season. Smart, not smart.
Not smart. You got to take the route that Griffin took. You tied Barry Sanders' record. I don't think you're going to get any better than that. Unless you have another monster season that you follow up on, his stock is never going to be as high as it was right now. He did extremely well. Combining that with Wilson over in Wisconsin, it's a great combo right there. Wilson's gone, so the majority of the carries is going to go on Ball, and he just had a huge breakout year this year. I don't see him doing that again. And I think his stock will drop because of it.
Yeah, I would also agree. It's not smart, but it's respectable.
Yeah.
Like, I mean, I know that his stock was great this year, but he can also come out, and if he's hungry for that title or he's hungry for that Heisman, I mean, with the guys that left, he has a good shot at the Heisman Trophy again, and it's all about his prerogative. Like, if he wants to stay in college, then, I mean, I guess I can respect it, but I really don't think it's a smart move because he could have been a top 15 pick as the running back behind Trent Richardson to be drafted in the NFL and get a good payday, but, I mean, the guy's got a good shot at the Heisman next year if he repeats the same kind of season.
Back to USC, Matt Barkley. Smart, not smart, staying in school.
I want to say not smart, but I'm going to go with smart because there's no way he was going to pass up Luck for the number 1 overall pick. Too many people were raving about Luck being a once-in-a-generation guy. Barkley came on strong there, but he might have even passed up by Griffin. After everything Griffin did, he might have been the 3rd quarterback taken. If he goes back from one more year, he's gotten better each year he's played. He comes back, he has a great senior year. He's in the Heisman contention part. He's in for a national championship. A lot of people are predicting USC to be the number 1 ranked team, or at least in that top 5 category. You got to look at him as if he does even half of what he did this year, his stock is still going to shoot way up there. He'll definitely be the number one quarterback taken next year.
Yeah, I think it's completely smart because the only offensive player that USC lost this year was Matt Khalil, who's on Kuiper's big board as number 3 for an offensive tackle. And I think Barkley has a great shot at a great senior season because he is the kind of quarterback, he's a winner. Like, he won at high school, started a 4-year starter for USC, and USC being a massive football program. I mean, I think he's got a good shot. USC's defense also strong, and I think they have a really good shot at a BCS game, if not the national championship.
All right, last one. Alabama. Barrett Jones, Outland Trophy winner, offensive lineman. Smart, not smart. 2 national titles, too, mind you.
I don't know. I mean, I haven't heard much about him, so I'm going to say smart because I think he's I haven't heard much about him as an offensive guy. Usually, if someone stands out, particularly, he won the Allen Trophy Award, but maybe you feel he get one more year, maybe he can win one more championship, and then he'll be really up there. But we'll see. I'm going to go with smart for now. Stay.
I'm going to go not smart just for the fact that he does have 2 national titles. He's an offensive lineman. He's not going to be winning the Heisman anytime soon. So for him to stay, I mean, again, respectable, but I feel like he could be a great NFL prospect, get a good payday. You know, you could still finish out your education and come back. But I think Barrett Jones is a great he's a great offensive lineman, so he could have went to the NFL very easily.
That disappointed me so much. I wanted him in Cleveland. Get a right tackle for crying out loud.
At some point, instead of the meatball.
Moving on to something that's very serious right now. Sarah Burke, who is a talented skier, who was involved in a very serious accident January 10th, passed away this afternoon. She wasn't too much older than us. This is a very dark day in sports, guys.
Yeah, she was the freestyle skiing. She was the pioneer for it. Like, widely regarded in the world as the woman who led through that, and to suffer injuries. Same course where another skier injured himself and had brain damage in 2009. Same exact place. She got hurt on the final jump down. Same place that he did. I think that's just more about that actual place. Something needs to be done about that. Something needs to be fixed. And it's just sad to see whenever someone passes away. We know about the Georgian skeleton slitter in the Olympics passed away because it was too fast, and she's passed away. It shows you how dangerous sports can actually be. We sometimes forget about that until we get reports like this, and it's just really sad. And 29 years old.
Yeah, you see these people, you think that they're invincible, and then reality hits when something like this happens. You know, you look at last season in IndyCar, Dan Weldon, who was involved in that very serious crash,
31.
passed away. These guys, they're not invincible. They are normal people too. They are very talented and gifted, and sometimes just people tend to forget about something like that.
Yeah, I mean, it's such a tragedy to even think about this. And I mean, but one thing that it does, it brings up the safety issues in sports. Dan Weldon, as soon as Dan Weldon, one of the faces of IndyCar, passes away, IndyCar realized they had to make changes to their sport for the safety of the other drivers. Yeah. And with Sarah Burke's death, I mean, if you're the Olympic Committee, you have to make sure your skiers have the proper equipment and make sure the courses are difficult on Olympic quality, but are also safe. I mean, because granted, competition is the main thing that drives sports, but safety is the thing that you have to be most concerned with. And something like this can bring it out. Yeah,
and you want to talk about someone who drastically changed safety regulations. Dale Earnhardt crashing into the wall because he didn't want to use that headset, that headrest, ended up dying from it. And now it's mandatory, and I think NASCAR has never been safer.
The head and neck safety device is one's mandatory, once Dale Earnhardt passed away. And then also the track up in New Hampshire, I think it was, where Adam Petty and Kenny Irwin both were involved in a wreck in the same corner, and both passed away at different instances. So it's very realistic as to how dangerous sports actually can be. But our thoughts and prayers go out to the Burke family, as it is never easy when you lose a loved one such as that. But moving on to our final topic of the night.
It's hockey time.
That one was from you, Jesse. Every time he played it, he loved it. The New York Rangers, of all teams, at least I didn't see this one coming, are tied for the league lead with 62 points. They're tied with Chicago, and seriously, who's all the Rangers actually doing something this year? They're normally one of those teams that just squeak into the playoffs in the Eastern Conference, but this year they're just tearing it up.
Yeah, I mean, Lundqvist having another good year. I mean, he has been one of the most solid players the Rangers franchise has seen. And I mean, you look at the Eastern Conference, that is probably one of the toughest conferences in any sport. I mean, every team that makes it into the playoffs in the Eastern Conference is strong. Because I mean, you look at the Blackhawks, you look at the Rangers, you look at the Penguins. I mean,
Blackhawks are in the West.
Blackhawks are in the West. I mean, see, that tells you how much I follow hockey, but I mean, still, strong teams like that, I mean, they're powerhouses, and I mean, the Rangers just came out of nowhere.
The Rangers have been one of those teams in the past, like you talked about. They've been a powerhouse in the past. We know about them and the Islanders and their battles and such. But now you've got this kind of like team that's they've been like fiddling around, and they're owned by Dolan. Oh, surprise, surprise! A New York team owned by Dolan that stinks because Dolan's a terrible owner. But you look at that, you talk about Lundqvist, widely regarded as one of the top goalies when he's on his game. Currently, New York is 29-11, actually a better record away than they're home 14-4-2, away 15-7-2. They have one more win away than they do at home. They're currently tied with the Penguins right now, but you really got to give them credit. That's one of the teams that you see as a mark. You want that team. You want a New York team as a marquee franchise. And these guys, if they can move their way up and do that, much like what Buffalo did early on in the 2000s when they had Ryan with Miller and they had those guys that got to the Eastern Conference Finals twice, New York was buzzing. You got the Rangers in the actual city now. They're buzzing as well.
You know, you look at it, the Eastern Conference has just one team above 60 points this year so far, and that is the Rangers. Now, granted, Boston's right there at 59, but then Washington, who's leading the Southeast, only has 52. You look at the West, the Central, 3 teams at 60 or above. Chicago at 62, Detroit at 61, and St. Louis at 60. And then you got Vancouver in the Northwest who have 60 points as well. So I think it just proves that any sport where there's a West, they're in conference, they dominate.
Yeah.
Except for the AFC West.
I said conference, not division.
Still.
It's a difference.
I'm going to count it.
Hey, don't argue with me. I will throw down suspensions. I am not afraid of it.
Is Steve still suspended?
Is he here? It is pick time now, is this week. It is the championship weekend for the NFL. Ravens at the Patriots. Who are you guys taking?
You know, Ravens are 1-6 all time against the Patriots. That one win came in the 2009 playoffs. I see a repeat. I see the Ravens beating the Patriots at home.
I am just completely against the Patriots and what they stand for, but I honestly think the Ravens are going to win this game. I mean, I would have picked them anyway, but I think the Ravens' defense is too much to handle. And like Vince alluded to earlier, Ray Rice having a phenomenal year, career year so far earlier in his career. I mean, I think he can run all over this bad Patriots defense.
I will take the Ravens as well, just because back at the start of the season, I said it was going to be the Ravens in the Super Bowl.
Sticking by his person.
I am sticking with it.
You got one half possibly right.
Yeah, my other team got knocked out in the first round of the playoffs.
2 points.
Yeah, that was it. I predicted a Ravens-Falcons Super Bowl.
It's all right.
Hey.
I predicted a Packers Chargers Super Bowl with like the score being like 62-50. So
That he did. You know,
it was a wild prediction.
Yeah, nonetheless, though. Moving on. Giants, 49ers. Good matchup this weekend of some great defenses.
This is a tough one because I had pictured the 49ers getting here to the championship but losing to the Packers. But the Packers lost. Giants are coming in, and I honestly, I don't like Eli Manning, and I know the Giants have been on fire, and I don't want to believe in them. I say the 49ers eke this one out. Another, like, a close game, another interception like they beat the Giants earlier in the year, interception in the red zone. I think the 49ers barely pull this out.
I think I'm going to take the 49ers, too. I like their team. I mentioned I like Jim Harbaugh. I like what he's doing. And I think they're a motivated team. Now, granted, the Giants are the team on the hot streak right now. They have every ounce of momentum going into this game, but the Niners want something to fight for. They haven't done anything in the post-Steve Young era, so I got the Niners in this one.
Interesting fact, Giants are 4-0 in NFC Championship games. 49ers, Giants are 4-0, Niners are 5-7.
I'm going to take the Giants just because I like the receiving core against that defensive backfield for the Niners. I just don't think that they can stick with them.
Scary.
Hakeem Nicks. Ooh. That's all I got to say.
You know, if people would actually wrap up instead of just hitting people, the game would have been a little different.
You know, my cousin and I actually had a good conversation about that while we were at B-Dubs on Sunday watching that game, but nonetheless, that's a whole different story.
Clap.
On to the... Oh, that was annoying. Nonetheless, NBA time. The Atlanta Hawks and the 76ers, who are red hot this year.
This is a great matchup because Atlanta, while they lost Al Horford, Joe Johnson has stepped up. And I say Atlanta ekes this one out against Philly.
Yeah, I have Atlanta too. They're 4-0 since Horford went out, which is kind of weird because Horford is their biggest post player. But I mean, I have Atlanta in this game.
Hey, you know what? The Clippers keep on winning despite the fact they don't have Chris Paul right now, so you don't need your big star to
They
win.
didn't have Blake Griffin last night either, and they won.
No, they had Blake.
No, Blake didn't show up. He had
Oh,
no points.
that's true. Yeah.
Nonetheless, I'll take the Hawks. No apparent reason either. Moving on. Matchup of a finals rematch from a couple years ago. You got the Orlando Magic, who are 10-4, and the Lakers, who are sitting at 10-5. Who you guys got?
This all depends on if Kobe decides to drop 40 or 4. And you got to look at that. And I think the Lakers are going to pull this one out. I think they're going to gut it out. The Magic are just on all sorts of stuff with Dwight Howard picking every other team that he wants to go to every other day, depending on who's the best team at that point. I want to go to the Cavs. I want to go to the Clippers. I want to go to.
He's never going to say he wants to go to the Cavs.
I was making a joke.
I know.
He's gonna He's gonna request.
Bring him.
He's gonna request a trade to the 49ers pretty soon here
Yeah.
because they're the best team right now. But
Bring Dwight to Cleveland.
that'd be awesome.
But I actually have the Magic in this one. I mean, the Lakers are playing really well, but like you said, if Kobe's got to drop above 30 for them to win a game. I mean, Pau Gasol is having a little bit of an off year. Bynum started the season great. He's fallen off a little bit, but Dwight had a 24-point, 25-rebound game 2 nights ago.
Finally.
I mean, so I think that the Magic can pull this one out against the Lakers.
I take the Magic as well because I think Howard will just absolutely eat Bynum down in the post.
And you just don't like Kobe.
Exactly. Moving on, the second time we got Philly on our picks this week, just for the fact that they play Miami. And this is a matchup of the number 3 seed right now versus the number 5 seed in the East.
You got to look at it. Miami, depending on if one of their big 3 is healthy, I say Miami wins this game. They've got the surprising thing about Miami is they've actually got people who are complimenting them. Shane Battier, and you've got Norris Cole. He's averaging some decent points.
Cleveland.
I'd say, as much as I hate it, I'm gonna go with Miami in that game too. I mean, I guess I got Philly hate tonight.
I have Miami hate 24/7, so I'm going to go with the Sixers in this one. I mean, I think they're a good team this year, but I mean, I just feel bad for Norris Cole having to go from Cleveland to Miami. I mean, that's another story for another day.
But he got drafted. That's a difference.
I know he
have a
didn't pick
choice.
it, but I mean, he's actually playing well. But I just don't like the Heat. I mean, you know, I'm a Cleveland fan. It's obligatory,
Can't
so I'm
like
gonna
them.
go with the 76ers.
I'll take Philly as well, just for the fact that Wade, there's no telling when he's going to return, and LeBron, he's got the flu.
Yeah.
So I laugh at you, LeBron. Even
He
though
can
you
cough at Dirk all he wants.
even though you are playing tonight. Odds maker time now. What are the odds of an all hardball Super Bowl?
I got it at 75%. I picked both those guys to win, but like I said, the Giants. It's going to be a close game in that one. But I definitely think the Ravens are making it. Not so sure the other side. That's why I'm giving it 75%.
I'm going to go 50% on this one. I mean, I would love to see 100%.
Well, obviously.
I mean,
I
I would love to see a Harbaugh Bowl, but I think Jim Harbaugh has the better shot of making it in there against the
You're
Giants
sitting in
right now.
Steve's seat. You're supposed to get the obligatory 76.94 number that he usually
But
gives.
you see, the thing is, though, Ryan actually likes baseball.
Yeah,
You got to be
this is true.
anti-baseball to give it an obligatory
That's
percentage.
true.
I want to say it's about 40%. You know, I think the Niners could possibly pull it off, but I don't know. I just think the Giants are going to be too much for them to handle. Bonus pick time. Who falls first, Syracuse or Murray State?
Oh, that's a tough one because I've seen a total of 0 Murray State games this year and about 5 or 6 Syracuse games, but I'm going to go Syracuse. I mean, like we talked about earlier, Murray State plays teams like Morehead State and UNC Asheville. I mean, those teams aren't going to do anything. Syracuse is in the Big East. Now, granted, Syracuse is having an amazing season, but any team in the Big East can show up at any given night. Like last night, Cincinnati against number 11 Connecticut. I mean, they could show up at any point, and the Big East is a really powerful conference.
Yeah, and the sad part is it probably will get demolished because of football, even though they're the clearly dominant conference in basketball. But that being said, I think Murray State's going to be the first one to lose. I think Syracuse is just too much on a roll right now. Murray State reminds me a little bit of what San Diego State and BYU was. They're those mid-major teams that
Jimmer.
can get. Yeah, they just get on fire. Yeah, Jimmer to Tim Tebow of NBA, and you got to look at that. Just catches fire, and I think they cool off a little bit here coming up. We'll see though. How about Harvard? I think they're still in the rankings. Go Harvard.
Go Ivy League. I think it's going to be Syracuse as well, like Ryan said. Just much better level competition up there in the Big East. It's the premier conference in basketball. So Syracuse loses first. Murray State, the last undefeated team. But that'll do things for us here tonight on Raiders and Weekly. We thank you for joining us, and we hope that you will join us on Saturday as we will be right here on campus covering the women's basketball game. Tip-off is scheduled for 3 o'clock. Ryan will definitely be there, and it should be Steve with the call as well.
Hopefully he doesn't have another astronomy class.
It's Saturday.
Never know.
If he has a strum on Saturday, I will smack him upside the head. I have no problem doing that. But nonetheless, we hope you will join us on Saturday for the game. It should be an exciting one for the women. And we hope you join us next week as well for Arizona Weekly, 8 o'clock as always. And until then, keep listening to the radio voice of Mount Union, WRMU 91.1.